Welcome to the Pockets of Knowledge podcast. I'm your host, Desiree Stanley, here to share some amazing conversations. We're talking business, health, making and saving money, or starting something epic. Think of this as your go-to spot for stories that do a lot more than just kill time. They spark ideas, give you a boost, and perhaps even change the way you look at the world. I'm pulling in the experts, the thinkers, the doers, and the dreamers. We're about to dive into stories that open doors and ideas that light up your brain. Here we go. Welcome, everyone, to the Pockets of Knowledge podcast. I'm your host, Desiree Stanley, and with me today is my guest, Dr. Michelle Hanna. How are you today, Dr. Michelle?
I'm doing okay. How are you?
I am as well. It's
Good.
been some interesting times, and
Yes.
as this episode airs, it will be a few months from now, so we'll see how that is. But today, I'm so honored to have you on the show, and I cannot wait for the listeners to hear all of this wonderful stuff that you're going to be sharing with us. And just to give the listeners a little background on you, you are a best-selling author, you are a speaker, you are a personal and business coach, you have 2 doctorates, which is so impressive. And really, I think that your mission is kind of to empower people really to embrace self-love, authenticity, to be resilient. And I just can't wait for the listeners to hear more about what you have created, which is the Self Vows series. And so, again, Dr. Michelle, welcome. Would you tell the listeners how this journey happened for you? Like, how did you get to where you are today?
I guess I'll go all the way back to when I was born because I think about pain and I think about purpose. And I know for sure they intersect and they align. And I know a lot of times when people are going through pain or they think about pain, you don't necessarily think about purpose. When I was born, the doctor had told my mom that I had a brain disorder, but I was in 1972. So they didn't really know what that was, but they knew that something neurological was going on in my brain. So I uncontrollably shook. And he told my mom basically on purpose, you have to hug her and put her real close to your heart. And maybe the love will cause her to calm down and feel safe and know that it is okay. And so my mom did that every single day for some months. And every time that she would pull me close to her heart, I would stop shaking. And the moment she would put me down, I started shaking again, so much so that they were giving me epilepsy medicine at that time. And so for me, that was my first lesson, not even knowing of pain connecting to purpose. And I'm sure not even my mom knowing the power of purpose and how that connects. I think that when it connects to relationship, being at the foundation, whether it's personal or whether it's business, because the first thing I think about is authenticity. I really don't think that you can connect to purpose without authenticity. And I think about accountability. I think about being self aware, and boy, is that a journey. And so, all of those things are very foundational, whether it's personal or whether it's business. And the one thing that I talk about all the time is intimacy. I feel like we cannot reach our full potential in any relationship, personal or business, if we don't have intimacy. I even have a program called Business Intimacy. And just now, in the last couple of years, companies and organizations are starting to connect to the word intimacy and business at the same time, because intimacy is just, can we have a deeper connection? That's all. But I think when people would hear the word intimacy, they totally go to something totally different. And so, yeah, that's beautiful to see now that seems like they're finally coming around and getting it there.
Well, thank you for sharing that story with us of your early days from birth. I mean, that just sounds like, wow, what an experience. And having your mother just really cradle you in that way, I just can't imagine the love that would be flowing between the two of you is just tremendous. And so, would you share how you really kind of got into coaching, both for personal level and for business leaders and executives? And I love this idea of intimacy in business. And you're right, this immediate thought is to go toward like a sexual nature, but that's
Right.
not what we're talking about. Intimacy can also be understanding ourselves or
Yes.
understanding our partners or the people that we work with. And so I love
Mhm.
this concept. So would you share some more of that with us?
Yes, and just to comment on something that you just said, is that, even sexually, we can be physical, right? Because the act is physical, but intimacy, that's a totally, completely different thing. And I think when people have experienced the physical side of it, then they experience physical intimacy. They go, oh, wow, that was deeper. That was a difference. I think even in business, we wanna know, like, do you see me? Do you see my worth? Do you see my value? Does what I feel, does what I think, does it matter? We want to know that in business too, especially being small entrepreneurs. We really need to know that because a lot of times it's just us that is running everything. We may have a virtual assistant, but hands-on, it's us. Even when I had a foundation, I had a board, I had an advisory board, but honestly, it was me and my assistant that was doing all of the work. I mean, I love the board and I love the advisory board, but we were really doing all of the tough work. So I think intimacy is so important because you should know your business and you should know yourself. If someone knows your business better than you, that's a problem. You need to know your business better than anybody and know yourself better than anybody. And that's a journey. That's where authenticity comes in. And 5 years ago, I really thought I was like at my authentic self. I was feeling really, really good, right? And I'm not saying that I wasn't at my authentic self. I was at my authentic self in terms of my growth capacity. But today, wow, me being authentic in this moment is totally different than what I thought it was 5 years ago. So I think giving yourself grace and and being kind to yourself and patience and knowing that you will continue to evolve and continue to grow, so will your authenticity. Same thing in business. When we first start, those first 3 years are really, really tough. But then as you make more money, as you get more clients, then you think back to when you first started, you're like, that wasn't that tough. But now it's tough. You know, it seems like the more responsibility, it gets tougher. And so I then go back still to authenticity. If you're doing something and it doesn't feel good and it doesn't feel peaceful, you have to stop and figure out, okay, what areas of my life, emotional, physical, spiritual, and intellectually, who have I given access to? And if you go down that list and every name you look at or every project you look at and you don't get the feeling of just calm, even though it might be very difficult, but okay, it's going to be okay. If you look at that name or you look at that project and something in your stomach, you're like, oh, it just doesn't feel peaceful. It doesn't feel aligned. Perhaps either that person or thing does not need to have access in your life, or maybe you got them in the wrong category. Maybe that person needs to be in the intellectual because they're good with that, right? And you connect and you align, but not so much when it comes to the emotional or the health. So you have to make sure, okay, you know what? When I give my access to people, that it's in the right category, even if it's yourself, because sometimes we have things in ourselves that we go, I don't, that should not have access to me. That kind of fear should not have a whole home in my mind. I shouldn't give space to that. Yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Michelle. Really some great stuff to think about in there for sure. And this idea of it really is a journey. Every part of our life, every part of running a business, every part of relationships changes and flexes over time. And we really have to remember that it's going to look a little different,
Yeah.
and what we saw before maybe doesn't look the same as right now. And we've
Mhm.
really got to just give ourselves a grace, like you said,
Mhm.
and be open to continuing to learn and grow, and then understand, how do these pieces fit together? How do these people fit in my life? And do they need to have, a super close relationship to me or what I'm doing, or whatever the case may be? So
Yes.
good. Yeah.
Abs
And I love that you mentioned the authenticity piece of this. And so I think that it ties in because you thought you were authentic before, and it's not that you weren't. You were authentic in that moment in what was happening, right?
Right.
And so this again ties into wherever you're going, you've got to kind of reevaluate, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that's okay. I think that, and not even I think, I know that's okay. I know it's okay to change your mind too. Because sometimes we think that when we're committed people, we're loyal people. Like I'm a loyal person. And once I commit to something, I literally will have to be in the hospital for me not to show up for you, right? But I've since changed my mind about that. I thought that was noble, but I don't know that that's maybe noble, but it is not the most healthy for me because if I'm in pain or if I don't feel good, I have to tend to me. All that I'm speaking about, self-love and all these wonderful, beautiful things, self vows, that doesn't line up if then I don't say to me, yes, you made the commitment. Yes, you're loyal and nothing changes because you just have to reevaluate and the commitment is now to you. The loyalty is now to you, not to others. You can change your mind. People are resilient. They will find another person. They will go on with the show. So, yeah.
Yeah, great point again, for sure. I love that because, and the expression we know all the time is, we cannot give to others if we are not filling up ourselves first. And it's like,
Yes.
I don't think we can hear this enough. We have to, yes, yes, we've committed to something. Yes, we really want to be there for something or follow through with something. But if we're sick or we're not feeling well, what are we really going to bring to the table in that condition?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because here's the thing, if I always talk about a car, right? Because I hate pumping gas. Like I literally detest it. So I'm one of those people, not so much anymore, but I was one of those people that literally would be praying that I make it home because I was almost out of gas. And I would then negotiate with God and say, if you just let me make it home this time, I will not do it again. Okay. So if you continue doing that, though, running out of gas or almost running out of gas where you're on fumes over and over again, so basically, when you are on fumes or when your car is on fumes, it's not going to begin to perform very well for you if you continue to keep doing that over and over again. So it's the same thing with us. When we get on fumes, we're pouring from fumes. So that's just like when people come to you and ask you for advice. I will tell my friends, I'm on fumes today. I know better than to even be on fumes because usually when I see it's a half tank, I'm like, okay, shut down everything. I have to fill myself up. But when I'm on fumes, I tell everyone, I would not trust whatever I'm saying right now because I'm on fumes. So I'm going to give you advice from a person that is beyond tired, which I would not trust that. And I'm very honest with that with, anybody. And it's funny because some of my friends will say, no, but even your fumes advice is good advice. I'm like, no, I'm not, I'm not doing it. Okay. What I need is a bed right now. What I need is meditation or some grounding to feel just your feet grounding in the grass or grounding in the sand. So that's so important about pouring from an empty place or pouring from a place where you're full. It's completely two different things.
Yeah, you are 100% right. I absolutely agree with that, and I love the analogy of the gas just running on fumes. I think everybody can relate to being in that position where you just are like, "Please just even let me get to the gas station so I can fill up." Yeah, I've been there myself. So, can we talk a little bit more about the accountability and the self-love and how you emphasize that in your coaching and in your writing? And what do you want to share with the person listening?
So I would say, okay, we have self care and we have self love. And I think, since the pandemic, those have been getting a bit mixed up, right? Self care is the execution of self love. If we don't have self love, we're probably not going to be very good at self care, right? Self care is getting your nails done, your pedicures, your walking on the beach. I love flowers. It's not waiting on anybody else. It's giving my own self flowers. It's not waiting on anybody else to even travel with you. If you want to travel and you want to go somewhere and why you can do it, go, just be safe, but don't wait on anybody, right? That's the self care thing. Self love, we cannot even have self love. And I say this all the time if you don't really like yourself. And so some of my clients say, no, 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 I do. I do. I like myself. And I say, okay, well, do you go to dinner with yourself? Do you hang out with yourself when you're sometimes on dates? You know, and the person says, well, what do you like to do? And you say, well, what do you like to do? Okay, well, what do you do for fun? What do you do for fun? Because you really don't know what you really like or what is even fun to you, what sets your soul on fire. You haven't even spent time with yourself to even figure that out. Or what are the things about you that get on your own nerves? Like, you have to first start to like yourself, then to date yourself. Isn't that what we do in relationship? And then in dating yourself, what you also do is you start learning how to create boundaries. Yes, not just for other people, but for your own self too, right? And then once you start in that relationship with yourself, you will really fall in love. And then your love will start to grow and it will go from level to level to level. So then when you are dating someone or you're in relationship with someone, right? Now I'm extending what I already feel about myself to someone else and I choose differently, right? So when I love me, I choose differently. I'm not going to choose someone that does not have respect for me, that doesn't cherish me, that doesn't support my visions and my dreams, and they're not intimidated or jealous, of me. So self-love, right? Let's start with liking ourselves and then let's go through the journey and then let's date ourselves. And then after that, we will start to do, actually in the dating phase, you will start to do things that are like self-care. It, it's also, I think, just healthy emotional needs and knowing what your emotional needs are. I think it's an exercise that I do with my clients is feeling in fact. It's knowing what is a feeling and what is a fact. The fact has evidence to back it. And then we have our feelings. So even myself, just recently in December, I was going through something very major. And on one side of the paper, I put feelings, and on my other side, I put facts that can be backed up by evidence. And what I realized is that 80% of what I was going through was my feelings. It had not happened. Most of the stuff I was feeling had not happened yet. I was already creating and writing my story that I had no evidence of, right? And then I had the evidence. And so then I started to focus on what are the facts, Michelle? You can have your feelings, but we gotta give ourselves like a time frame. It says, okay, you have 30 minutes to feel all the anger that you possibly feel. You give it all you got. But after that 30 minutes, I can't do 30 minutes. I can only really give myself about 5 minutes of real, real anger, right? And after that, I then give myself 10 to 15 minutes of nothing but just showering myself with all positivity or hope, because sometimes we could be angry about something that we feel we're hopeless, because of whatever the situation is. And so I think it's so important about our emotional needs. I think it's important in self-care to leave space for healing and forgiveness. And sometimes that's tough. Forgiveness is necessary. Reconciliation, that's your choice. You don't have to reconcile in order to forgive. You can forgive to release that pain, that whatever plethora of feelings that you're feeling. But you don't necessarily have to reconcile unless it's healthy for you, and the other person as well.
Dr. Michelle, thank you again so much. That's just tremendous information. I think that we all can really even begin this right now, today, starting with this list of my feelings and the facts of the situation. And I think, I mean, I know from myself personally, going through this quite a lot recently about the facts of the situation versus my feelings. And I have been all in my feelings. And so I can absolutely relate to that. And so, what a great tip that you've just shared with us to really just put these things down on a piece of paper so we can see them and really get straight with what's going on. And so I think that's tremendous. So thank you for that. And there's so much in there about you've really, this idea of you've got to like yourself. You've got to take time for yourself so you even know who you are and what is acceptable, what is not acceptable, and, make those choices based on who and what you are. And so I just think that's fantastic. So thank you so much for sharing those with us. Oh my gosh. Okay. So would you share a little bit about how the listeners can begin this journey of kind of healing and growth if they feel like they're stuck or they're overwhelmed? I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Well, and I'll say this because it's been my journey. It's been so many clients of mine's journey. And then it's been individual journeys that I've never even met before that just maybe sent me a little note. So years ago, I knew that there was something that was beyond why couples come into my office. I started with couples first, but why singles did too, right? Individuals. And I couldn't put my hand on it, like my finger on it. I felt like, okay, I know what the statistics are, why couples usually, lack of communication, sex, finances. Okay, we really know the top three, but it has to be something else. And I knew it, but I just didn't know what it was. And I'm a researcher, so I'm researching and researching. And I just still didn't feel it. So after weeks, after months, and we're almost at a year, I was so frustrated. Probably, this is what I should have did from the very beginning. I relaxed. I relaxed and I just let it go. I said, well, if it's meant, it'll come to me. If not, whatever. I'm not going to treat it like a project because it wasn't a project. It was something very innate. So I literally woke up the next morning and I sat straight up in my bed because I knew what it was. And it was that no one had taken their self vows. What that means is we will stand up in front of someone and literally take the most important vows to another person, right? And then not even remember what the vows were like a week later. You might remember one. Then some of my clients, they just make up vows that are not even vows were. So I literally looked at those traditional vows and I started to break them down where just literally where it was like page after page after page of just one vow. Then I began to ask questions that you cannot say just yes or no. They were so layering. And I was even tired of just even, and one vow, I was just really tired. I was like, oh, this is going to take a long time to like uncover what I was really, I think, after. And so once doing that, I realized that that's what it was, that if we would just take our self vows, so I'll give you two examples to have and to hold from this day forward. Do I have everything about me? I didn't say that to not change it or that you need to change some things, that we need to transform and transition. I said, right now, right in this moment, do I have everything about me? Am I willing to just tell the truth about what it is and own my own stuff? Can I not judge me in this moment and just tell the truth about where I really am? To hold, to support. Am I my biggest cheerleader? Or am I always looking for someone else to validate me and to confirm this and confirm that? I know that it was my vision and my dream, but then I'm looking to you to say, oh, it's okay. Yeah, you can do it. Or am I the person that is my greatest cheerleader? See, sometimes you have to move in silence and not say anything to anybody and just start working on your dream or your vision. And when it's time, then you share it because then you won't be distracted by the people that they can't see the dream or the vision from this day forward. See, a lot of us are stuck and we stir in our own stuff and we keep bringing up the stuff of the past because we haven't healed over it. And it prevents us for all the beautiful things of the future. I heard someone say, you know what? In the present, I have to fight for the future. So that means that I got to work on me right now because of what I will be in the future. And I'll take this second vow because there's 7 of them. So I'll take this one because it's so important. It's one of my favorites to love and to cherish. So we talked about if you don't like yourself, how are you going to love yourself? If you don't date yourself, how are you going to get to know yourself, right? So if you don't do those things, you're really not loving yourself. So we got to go through the process. And then we get to the loving ourselves. And then we have that cherish part. Cherish is this thing is so special to me. My life is so special to me. My heart is so special to me. I have to protect that. I have to protect my mind. I have to protect, my visions, my dreams, my thoughts. So when you start to, and again, there's many, many questions that go to these vows, but I think it's a great place to start with self. And some people say, well, I'm married, okay. Well, if you've never taken your self vows, I'm telling you that if you take the self vows, it will definitely start to bring some more healthy things in your marriage. I'm not saying that that fixes it. I'm just saying that sometimes we want the circumstance to change so bad. But what if we changed? Then maybe we wouldn't even be in that circumstance.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. Just even those two with us. I think this is such an interesting idea of looking at these vows in this manner when you're applying it to yourself. And I mean, like, my head has just kind of exploded thinking about it in this way because I have never, ever, even contemplated looking at these in this way. So I think for me, it's opened up something that I really want to explore. So I hope for the listeners too, they're kind of taking this in and going, maybe I should examine these things in this way. And so thank you for that. It's such a great concept. So what is how do I want to word this? What would you say are kind of the common obstacles that people are facing in relationships? And now you mentioned about doing these self vows. And if you're married, you're changing, but that's going to have a play on the relationship. And so what do you have to say about like what's that going to turn up, right? And what kind of things are going to come from that?
So I will say this, the beautiful thing about self vows is it's the gift that keeps on giving. So most people, when they read the book or when they went through the program, they end up doing it 3 or 4 times. And here's the other thing, just because you've done it, you've completed it, it's one of those things that you will grab when you're in maybe crises again, or you're in trauma again, or maybe maybe there's just a season where you're just not feeling it, right? So it is a gift that just will keep on giving throughout your entire life. So you're never really done with the self vows. It's like once you incorporate it into your life, it's in your life, right? So I would say that to answer your question though, it's communication. Communication is a real big one because I think that some of us can think we're really good communicators, determine on what the circumstance is, or we just may think that because we think that about ourselves, maybe not what the other person is feeling when we are communicating. I think a great exercise, and I haven't been able to master this yet, and I may never be able to master it, but communication, I believe, is when you are listening from compassion and you're not listening to defend. But when a person is expressing, right, you're listening with compassion. You're not even thinking about what I'm going to say or no, no, no. That is not true, what you just said. And I can't wait till you shut up. After this point, I'm not even listening to you. I can't wait till you shut up because and now it's going to be my turn and I'm going to defend everything you said because it's not even true, right? But it's not that. It's literally listening with compassion to take the burden off of that person that they've been, feeling. And then the second step is to repeat what you think that you heard. And then if you did, great, you were listening really good. But maybe that person, maybe they didn't, maybe they think that they communicated it a certain way, or maybe you think you heard it a certain way. And that's the time that we clear things up. Okay. And then here's the third step. This is the one that is just so unselfish and it's so loving. Is then you say, what can I do to take the stress away from you? See, I'm still not even thinking about me. I'm still not even thinking about all the things I need to say. What do I need to do to take the stress away from you? What do I need to do that I can be a part of making you more relaxed or your happiness? Not making you happy, but being a part of your happiness. Now, that person may not know themselves very well and they may not know what to say. They have been so connected with, I'm very good with being frustrated. I'm very good at communicating my frustration, but not so much on, well, wait a minute, what is the resolution? What would I need you to do? And so then you tell that person, like, you know what, when you think about it and when you come up with it, I'm here for you. And then, so even though they don't know, you still have that open space for them to come back to you. And then, of course, now it's your turn. And then that person has to do that. It's difficult because sometimes a person, we allow something that they say to be a trigger, and then it triggers us. And so compassion, what can I do to help you is all out the door. We are now triggered. And really, anger is the secondary emotion. Hurt is the first emotion. So really, we're hurt. So it's communication. It is accountability. We really do need accountability partners, even if it's just one person. That one person that's not just going to be your yes person, but they are going to hold you accountable. And they're going to call you out too. They're going to call you out when you need to be called out, right? And it's out of respect and it's out of love. And you listening is out of respect and out of love. I think it's self aware too. There's a big obstacle is being self aware. I really do think that a lot of times we don't realize what we're really doing. And because we're just not aware, we're not self aware of it. The other person that is like taking all of that in, I come from a family that we're just, well, I guess we're loud, but we're not loud in an obnoxious way. We're like passionate about stuff, So we just it shows up in our tone, right? But we could be smiling and hugging you at the same time, but it's probably not in the tone, obviously, is that I have with my clients, right? And so sometimes if a person has not come from that environment, they're like, whoa, whoa, why are you mad? We're like mad. Well, we're totally happy, right now. We just have this passion that sometimes may come off as though maybe our voice is raised, you know? So now that I know that someone else may be receiving it that way, I'm paying attention to your body language. I'm paying attention to your facial expression. And then that's my cue that, oh, okay, let me bring it all the way down. I know I'm not mad, but my passion is just like a little loud, you know? So I think just really having a desire to be self aware and honestly to understand that people come from different environments and to realize that it's not personal when it's not personal. Yeah.
Great stuff again, Dr. Michelle. Thank you, thank you, thank you. It's just like this nuggets of wisdom in what you are sharing that I think all of us, if we've heard some of it before, we need the reminder. We need to be listening to listen and understand and not to just respond. And I was talking with my guest last week about that very thing. And I know for
Mhm.
myself, in conversations with my husband, it's I'm listening to respond and not listening to understand. And your point about, having that compassion and holding the space for the person. And if you don't understand, asking for clarification. This is what I heard. Is this what you meant? Repeat it back. I'm just not understanding. And, being open to keeping that conversation alive in a way that is caring and respectful. And, you want to get to a resolution. And so I think
Yes.
that this is just brilliant. Great tips in there and steps for us to, implement into our lives. So I love it. Okay, so let's talk about how we can build stronger, more authentic connections with people.
Well, I think it starts with yourself. If I'm not authentic, then how can I build that type of relationship with someone else? So I think that, and I'm kind of tiptoeing with this because we're telling just everybody in this day and time, be vulnerable, but I don't think everybody deserves your vulnerability because I don't think it's safe with everyone. And I know this because I've been in a room full of people, and it's hard when you're a speaker because you're being authentic, but how do you really know if your vulnerability is safe? So now I do know though. The way that you know that is your intuition. And if you're not tapped into your intuition, you're not going to know. And unfortunately, you're going to have a lot of mishaps that honestly end up hurting you and disappointing you because your vulnerability wasn't safe. I also think transparency, is a choice, right? Because honesty, we can be honest, but transparency it's almost like I can tell you yes or no to something. But transparent is I actually now tell you a little bit more about that yes and how I came to that yes. I'm opening myself up. So I think that that's a choice as well. But I think that when we realize who should have access to us in whatever those areas are, we will be authentic in whatever that relationship is, right? So my authenticity for my emotions or my health may not be the same conversation for the intellectual or maybe even the spiritual. It just is two different conversations, right? So now that I know who needs to have access to my life and who doesn't, or who I need to deny access to, now authenticity in that situation. Now, listening to my intuition. Am I safe with what I'm about to say here? And whatever that answer is, I don't care if, you're looking at their face and, oh my gosh, but they look so nice. They look so sweet. But if your intuition says no, listen to your intuition. And then when you follow your intuition, because I believe it's with everything in me, it's always going to lead you to what your truth is for you. And I think that's the best way to be authentic in relationships. It's not just showing up in your authenticity and then being vulnerable and then being transparent and then just telling all of your most cherished secrets. It is really listening to yourself and reading the room and knowing who's in the room. So I think that's the best way to deal with authenticity. And people ask me, can you be authentic in business? And I say yes. And they say, because they don't believe me. How? Right? Well, authenticity in business is, what are my values? What are my boundaries? So, for example, your supervisor wants you to lie. I don't lie. That is not that completely disconnects from my values. That disconnects from my boundaries. I don't lie. So that is actually being authentic in business. And I'm going to tell you something. When you stand up for yourself like that supervisor is going to really think about, oh, wow, how do I look to this person? Right. And sometimes in some situations, they're just absolutely not self aware. But a lot of times they'll take a step back and maybe you say, I want to support you, but can we handle this differently that does not cause us to have a lack of integrity?
Yeah, great example for sure on that. I think for people who are, working for companies, you hope that they've got their values and their integrity is in place and they're not going to be asking you to do something like that, but you never know.
Right.
And, but what's important is that you know about yourself that
Mhm,
what's okay and what's not okay and what you are flatly going to refuse to do because it just
mhm.
absolutely goes against everything that you believe in and stand for. And so I think this is a great reminder for all of us that there's a way around it.
Yeah, or to
How
be time, even
yeah.
just the fact that how maybe your supervisor is asking you to constantly work overtime. But you just had a child and you're already suffering because now you're not on maternity leave anymore. You're away from the baby. And so you've told your supervisor, okay, I can do it on Tuesdays and Thursdays, but I cannot do it, any other day of the week. And your supervisor continues to ask you to stay overtime Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. So at that point, right, you have to be authentic because that connects to your values and your boundaries.
Absolutely. Another great example. So thank you for sharing that.
Mhm.
Oh my gosh, Dr. Michelle, there's so much more that we didn't even get to touch on. And I really feel like we could probably talk another hour on all of this. It's just been a wonderful conversation. But I would love for you to share if there's any last words that you want the person listening to know, you think they really should think about or understand, or just a piece of wisdom that you want to share at this point. What would you like to say?
So by the time that this is released, what I'm about to say will be released. The access part is very important. So after the self vows and people just reading it so many different times, some people have said, okay, now what? So in November, I went to Utah and I wrote a book in 3 days. And this book is the now what to the self vows. When I wrote the self vows was such a gift. I didn't really want to release it because it was a gift to me first. And then I released it. There's nothing different about this book. It is a gift to me first and then to the public. It's so important in who has access to you, what has access to you, even what emotions you are allowing to have access to you. If I would not have written that book, I totally looked at it from I learned a lot, but I looked at it from a different perspective. On December the 12th, I had an emergency surgery. They knew that they had seen some cancer, so they were going to remove it and that was going to be it. But I'm going to tell you, in my intuition, when they said, I hope it's not spread out the margins, I knew. I just knew it. I just knew it. I didn't want to know it, but I knew it, right? And then when I went back, they told me that it was a rare skin cancer. And there's literally not that many experts that even deal with it. There's only 3 in the United States, from what I am told. So I have a major journey ahead of me, right? But in that moment, I literally realized, okay, I have got to figure this thing out in terms of access right now. I knew that so many people would want to know about this, but I had to make a decision for me. And that was only 4 people, including my mom. And they all have capacities, like what their thing is that they're great at. And so whatever, like one person, they love to research. They're so good at sending me all of this stuff. And that's what she does. There's another person where she's so good at just being so compassionate and making me laugh. There's my mom, where my mom is just my mom. She's literally doing the same thing she did when I was born. She's holding me close and calming down the nervousness and the shakes in me. And my best friend has gone through a surgery her own self at the same exact time, but then she sends me texts that I need right in that moment. No one else can be on this health journey with me right now, no matter how mad they might be at me or they may feel bad. And I'm not doing it out of intention. It's me making the choice on who has access to me in that area right now. And I only say that today because I'm so passionate about whomever may be going through whatever your journey may be. Don't feel bad for in this moment saying, I need to figure out who has access to me and who I have to deny access to. And when you deny access to what needs to be denied, you open up the door for access granted. So that would be my last words of wisdom.
Thank you for sharing that. And my heart is with you right now going through this. And I thank you for sharing it with us. It's a lot. So I appreciate your honesty in sharing that and giving us an opportunity to explore how whatever we're going through, we can use this to keep ourselves safe and also receive the love from people that we know can help us in the time that we're in. So thank you again for that. I really would love for you to share with the listeners your book, Self Vows. And so that is out. How can the listeners find it? And then tell us again when the new book will be out.
Okay, so I'm so happy because we finally have a self vows series. So we have the vows for couples. So if you are thinking about getting married, if you are engaged, or if you are thinking about, sadly, breaking up or getting a divorce, I have the vows that is out there of understanding yourself and marriage. And then the self vows, all of these are on Amazon. So if you just type in Dr. Michelle Arhana, you type in the self vows, most of my books will come up anyway. So then there's the self vows. Now that is a must because that is your self vows journey before you get into any relationship. And if you are interested in working with me one on one and doing the program with me, you can absolutely reach out to me as well. There's a self vows littles that was inspired by my 2-year-old grandson. So it's teaching your little at their age the importance of the self vows. And we know how we were as teens. So we have the self vows for teens as well. You can find all of them on Amazon. And my new book that will be coming out is Access Denied, Access Granted. Totally excited about that. So you can email me at info@Michelle, Micheller, and then HANNAH.com. You can give me a call at 888-983-4446, and it will be me, and I will speak to you, not an assistant, but me, and we will have a good conversation. And you can also find me on the selfvows.com. That is my website, and then Instagram at the Self Vows Retreat, because we have a wonderful retreat that we do 4 times a year. Or you can also find me personally at Michelle_Hana on Instagram.
Perfect. Yes, thank you so much for sharing that. I will detail all of that information in the show notes so that the listeners can easily find it and find all of your wonderful books. And I love that you've got for the littles and for teens and everything. It's just so, so good. Is there any other books that you want to share with the listeners or podcasts that you think that they should check out? I'd love to have you share that, and then we'll close out the show.
Okay, so as far as podcasts, of course, listeners, keep on listening to Miss Desiree Stanley. Keep on listening. Another podcast that I really like is it's called Dear Future Wifey. I really love that podcast. It is such a gem. So, for those of you that have maybe tried counseling and you just find that you guys are at that fork in the road where you are going your separate ways, this book, Conscious Uncoupling, is so good. And I actually do conscious uncoupling as well too. It is such a wonderful concept. And then this book right here, The New Menopause. And this is for all my ladies that are going through menopause, me included, that are just like, what in the world is happening to me and my body right now? So I think that this book is just so good, and it's a comfort, and it lets you know that you're not in this by yourself.
Yeah, excellent recommendations for sure. I'll include those in the show notes as well. Thank you for that. Again, Dr. Michelle, this has been so fantastic. I so appreciate your time and coming on the show and sharing your knowledge with us. It has been amazing. Thank you again.
Thank you so much. It has been amazing, and I just love that it was just such a great conversation.
Yeah, good stuff. Well, we'll talk more soon.
Bye.
Thank you, dear listeners, for tuning in to another insightful episode of the Pockets of Knowledge podcast. We appreciate your time and curiosity as we explore fascinating topics together. If you enjoyed today's discussion, be sure to join us next week for another amazing episode. Remember, your journey of learning and growth is a continuous adventure, and we're thrilled to be part of it. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Until next week, stay curious and keep exploring those pockets of knowledge.